Welcome to the Stockboy Gaming channel, where we're finally putting the Gauntlet Hellfire to the test. It's its debut and it's going up against the Dominator ASP. We're also going to use the new Karen S95 non-house edition, and we're putting them all up against the Jester RR. It's another one of my videos where I tell you, hey, these could probably all be in the tuners class, and that's why we're using the normal S95 here instead of the house version. And we're starting off at La Puerta Dragway as usual. We want to get these cars to the 8th, quarter, and half mile, and I'm going to give you real accurate quarter mile times at the end. We got our two Japanese cars first, and the Karen S95 is going to beat the Jester RR to the 8th mile. This thing's pretty quick, but now we're going to that quarter mile line, and the Jester is going to claw its way back. It actually wins the race to the quarter mile by a couple hundredths of a second. So these two cars are really close when it comes to straight line speed. Going down to that half mile line, the Jester is going to pull away. So the Jester RR still pretty quick compared to that S95, but the S95 looks like it could do well in the tuners class. Now we've got the Dominator ASP on the right and the Gauntlet Hellfire on the left. Two muscle cars going at it here to the 8th mile. I don't do wheelies because I can't. They're not as accurate and consistent. And the Gauntlet Hellfire doesn't care. It is so fast from the straight line. If you drive this car already, you know how quick it is. But let's look at the ASP. It's actually keeping up better than I thought. Going down to this half mile line, that Gauntlet is going to extend the lead a little bit more, but the ASP is pretty quick. So now we got to see which one is fastest at the drag strip. Is it going to be the Gauntlet Hellfire, or is the Jester RR going to be able to take down this muscle car here at La Puerta Dragway? We're going to the 8th mile line first, and I'm hoping this is going to be a good race, but that Gauntlet Hellfire just tears off the line there. And there's a pretty decent sized gap when we get to the 8th mile line. Now the Jester RR came back on the S95, so it's going to be doing its best to do the same here. I don't think the gap gets much larger there, but it looks like that Gauntlet Hellfire is pulling away. This is definitely a big strength for the Gauntlet Hellfire, as you'll see here at the half mile. That thing is really good in a straight line, but that does not tell the whole story. That's why you're going to want to stick around here. All these cars are good, but the only one in 10 seconds is the Gauntlet Hellfire. That's a little bit disappointing. You still see, though, if they were in the tuners class, I think they'd stack up pretty well. And at that quarter mile, the Gauntlet Hellfire and the Calico GTF would probably be pretty competitive. So that's pretty cool to see. The S95, brand new in-game. If you have the Xbox Series X or PS5 version, you have the option to get it. You don't have to put the house upgrade on it, as you're seeing here. That's why we're testing it. We're going to see how it does. The Gauntlet Hellfire is a monster. Is it going to be the fastest around my speedway? Because now we're looking at top speed. But that Jester RR, we know from the tuners class, is pretty fast. So these two tuners, the Jester RR and the Dominator ASP, they're both going to be pretty good here at my speedway. We want to see if these other cars can keep up with them, and hey, could they hang in that tuners class? This, like I said, it doesn't tell you the whole story. You're going to want to see the laps for these cars, because that's when it gets a little crazy. But for now, that Gauntlet Hellfire at 127 is really fast for old cars in this game. Not necessarily when you consider house cars now, but that's really good. The other ones are well balanced, though. They're all in the 120s. So I don't know. I'm thinking we could get some pretty good racing here once we get to my test track. Fairly technical. It's a pretty good place to race, and we've got two awesome cars right now. We're going to see how this S95 can handle the Jester RR. We know the Jester RR is one of the best tuners in the tuners class. Ooh, excuse me. Going to that first gantry, it has the lead on the S95, and by a fairly decent amount, about a car's length. So we're going to go up to these double right-hand 90-degree corners, and this is really going to do well for the S95. As you see, it might, I think it maintains the gap there, but it handles really well. It's not maybe quite as fast as the Jester RR in a straight line, but you need to be nimble here, and it's a very, very nimble car. So as we're coming down to the reverse start-finish line, they get a little bit closer. The S95 is clawing away at that lead from the Jester RR, and this is a very tight little section into a long sweeping right-hand corner. All that extra rotation on the S95 is going to do it some favors here, and it pulls ahead of the Jester RR as we come to our final stretch. But now we know the Jester RR is actually faster in a straight line, so can it catch up? Not quite, only a couple hundredths of a second separating these cars again. Very, very close. Now we're looking at these muscle cars. Can the Gauntlet Hellfire hang on the track? And the first thing you're gonna notice is that the Gauntlet Hellfire is sliding around a little bit. That's not gonna do it a lot of favors against something like the ASP that's really stable and really quick. And you can already start to see the Hellfire falling back on my track. It doesn't love it here, and the ASP does. The ASP is pretty awesome. You can just attack corners. You can throw it into the corner. It's very, very easy to drive quickly here. But you'll see right there again, the Gauntlet starts to slide around a little bit. It's not quite comfortable. It's got a ton of power, and once you hit those straights, you hit them fast. But it's also a little heavy at the beginning of the corner. It takes a while for it to turn in. So it's not the best combination when you're racing on a technical track like this. So while you see here, the Hellfire is not even on that straight that the ASP just finished. So we know that the Hellfire is not going to win this race. But it won the first two by a pretty healthy margin. So we're going to have to see what that means. And that's why we have my speed score that I'm going to show you after we get through these lap times. It's going to tell you just how fast is that Hellfire and could it keep up with these cars in a race? Because right now at my track, it's not looking like it, but Rockstar tracks are a little different. All right, this is a pretty big test now. We want to see, can this S95 hang with the ASP? And the ASP is a really good car from the tuners. They are deadlocked going through that first hairpin, heading down this backstretch. Both of these cars have excellent handling, and I love driving them so much. The S95 has a bit of a lead now going into that first gantry. And coming in through this little sector here, these double right-handers, that S95 just flies through that section. And you can see it definitely is increasing the gap on the ASP. So we know the ASP is more powerful. It's got to start to pull through. This is where it's going to shine. Hopefully, we'll see it pull up a little bit and close that gap through this high-speed section. But it doesn't. And that's because the S95 is just really, really nimble. It's really easy to throw around, and it can oversteer a little bit if you're not careful, but if you can control it, much like the house version, it's a really great fast car. We got another drag race though. We know that that ASP is faster. Can it catch the S95 coming down the home stretch, going to the finish line? It's not going to quite get there. It's a couple tenths behind, but it's still a great car and a good car in the tuners class. So that S95 would fit in so well with the tuners. You can see here with the lap times, the Jester and the S95, the only ones that beat a minute. And that minute threshold is kind of the fast car threshold here. These two cars that you see with the Dominator and the Jester, they're both the nerfed versions. They used to do a little bit better here, but you know, thanks for that, Rockstar. Looking at the speed score, what you'll get with that 105 lap from the Gauntlet Hellfire, it drops way, way down to an 83 speed score, which is decent, and it would fit well within the second tier of the tuners class, but it's not going to be at the top. It would still be fun, and I know a lot of people would drive it, but it wouldn't be at the top of the tuners class. The S95 wouldn't either, but it would be really competitive with some of these other cars. It'd be a lot of fun. The Jester is still pretty good. It's not quite at the top tier with the Sultan and the Calico, but it has a good top speed. It's fun at certain places like Business End. You can do some damage with it still in tuners races, and it just looks phenomenal. They did a great job with that car. The S95 looks great too. Somebody at Rockstar loves their Toyotas because they really nailed this and the Jester in my opinion. I think they're both great. It's fun, it's awesome, it's expensive as hell, but hey, if you're weird like me and you want one house version, one non-house version, go for it because it is a lot of fun. The Dominator ASP I think is still one of my favorite cars in this game though. It's not really what you would expect. It grips a lot, it's really easy to throw into corners. You can get it to oversteer a bit if you're not careful, but for the most part, it just goes where you want it to go. And this Gauntlet Hellfire, just an absolute monster as we know. Maybe not quite great at cornering, but man, I want to get it in a tuners race and see how that acceleration will do. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments too. I'd love to hear you down there, and I hope to see you next time.